You're watching the ANEC Sports Podcast on YouTube. The show starts right now. Welcome to episode 18 of the ANEC Sports Podcast. My name is Sam Fred, founder and editor at Around the Northeast Corner, covering 30 schools across Northeast Indiana and parts of Elkhart County. That includes the ACAC, the NECC, and the Northeast 8. This is the final ANEC Sports Podcast episode of 2024 calendar year. So the next time you see another episode of the ANEC Sports Podcast, we will be going right into 2025. And 2024 was a tremendous year of tremendous memories, one of which for basketball, Norwell going all the way to the state finals in girls basketball, Garrett having a state champion wrestler, right? As well as New Haven having a state champion wrestler. New Haven girls wrestling won the first state championship, although it was not an IHSA sanctioned sport. New Haven will forever be remembered as a state champion in girls wrestling nonetheless. Other accomplishments were achieved along the way, but for the sake of timing purposes, we're going to keep it short. We'll maybe talk about that at another point, another time, another day. As far as this episode is concerned, I do want to make sure we recap briefly on a few things here. We want to keep things kind of short and sweet on the talk around the corner. So we'll go ahead and kick things off with girls basketball. We begin with the ACAC, and over the weekend with Bluffton remaining in first place in the ACAC, 4-0 in conference play, 13-1 overall. They are the only team without a conference loss, which includes a couple of weeks ago defeating Woodlands 66-43. This past week was a non-conference week for the Bluffton Tigers, dominating Southwood and Adams Central on the road. They are off until January 4th when they travel to the TP in Decatur, Indiana. They'll take on the Belmont Braves, who also only have one loss this year. For the Belmont Braves, they're 12-1 entering the new year. So this should be a pretty nice battle between two former conference rivals from the NEI days. And so the Bluffton Tigers entering 2025 with hopes of achieving 3 goals that still have not been met yet. And that includes winning their first ever conference championship, regardless of conference they've been in their entire history, as well as winning the first ever conference tournament championship in the history of Bluffton girls basketball. They are favored to do both of those things. Keep in mind with the regular season, the ACAC does have a tiebreaker, so they do have to make sure they win out on their conference games. You do not want to risk any chance of a team beating you via tiebreaker. So that includes beating Jay County in a couple weeks. And so that game is still up for grabs, as they have never beaten Jay County in girls basketball, and they have dominated the conference since joining in 2014-15 season, which includes only losing to ACAC competition 4 times combined, 3 of which come in the regular season. Now, Jay County does have a loss this year in conference play. That came against Woodland. So for Bluffton to have a much easier time of joining a chance of a conference championship, they need to beat Jay County in a couple weeks. We will talk about that at a later date. But we just want to let you know, entering 2025, Bluffton is in first place. We go over to the Hoosier Plains Conference. We don't talk too much about this conference because we only talk about Hamilton and Bethany Christian with this conference, but as things stand right now, both teams are off to a slow start. Bethany has lost their last 10 games after winning their season opener against West Snowball. Hamilton's 2-6. They're 0-3 in conference play in their first year in the Hoosier Plains Conference. But coming up on December 26th, both Hamilton and Bethany Christian will take part in a tournament hosted by Lakeland Christian Academy. And so there'll be multiple games going on, as during this time of the year, there will be a lot of holiday tournaments going on from across the entire state of Indiana. This is one of those tournaments. Shifting over to the NE8, entering 2025, Belmont and Columbia City are tied for first place in the NE8 for girls basketball. Belmont 3-0, Columbia City 3-0. Belmont's 12-1, Columbia City 10-3. The Eagles played Warsaw on Tuesday, put a competitive fight that night, fell by 15 points to a very talented Warsaw team, 65-50. Jocelyn Bricker with 26 points in that contest. Despite Addie Baxter's 32-point performance, not nearly enough. As for Belmont, they continue their dominant success, which includes a rare victory over Krehl, their first win against the Chargers since 2008. They beat Krehl 52-41, led by Emily Blakey's 22 points. Belmont will not play again until January 3rd. They travel to Eastside to take on the undefeated Eastside Blazers at Gerb Court. Columbia City, on the other hand, they will have a tournament coming up on the 27th, which is Friday and Saturday, This will be hosted by Twin Lakes. Columbia City's first matchup will be against Crown Point at 4:30 p.m. All information you can find easily on John Harrell's website. Shifting over to the NECC East Side. I mentioned this earlier. They are undefeated overall, undefeated in the conference, 6-0, 12-0 overall. This is their best start in the history of East Side girls basketball, as the Blazers achieved that mark back on Tuesday against Lakewood Park, 78-51, led by Lucy Kitchens, 17 points, I should say. On Saturday, which was against Lakeland, they defeated the Lakers 77-33 off a career high of 31 points. So they pressure as the Eastside Blazers continue to dominate, but the schedule is only going to get harder as they get into the new year. So Eastside is off until this Friday. They're at Heritage to wrap up the road slate for 2024. They will have a home game on the 30th, which is a Monday, against Eden, Ohio. But then they kick off 2025 with a slate of home matchups beginning on the 3rd against Belmont. On the 7th, they will be taking on DeKalb at the Old Butler Gymnasium for the Old Butler Gym Nights. And then on the 10th, before the NECC tournament, they will host the Fairfield Falcons. They're a big nemesis over the past couple of years, and a team that knocked them off in the conference regular season before Eastside knocked them off in the conference tournament title game. We'll talk more about that as we get closer to that week. But right now, Eastside currently tied with Central Noble for first place in the NECC, both sitting at 6-0. And then lastly, we want to talk about the TRC, the Whitko Wildcats. And we'll be talking with Justin Jordan later on the show, but his Wildcats are all alone in first place in the Three Rivers Conference, 4-0 in the conference. They are 8-2 on the season. They have won their last 5 contests, including a win over Lewis Cass on Saturday, 56-37, led by a team by committee of scoring. Adriana Phillips led the way, I believe, with 19 points in that contest, as she just recently committed to Principial College for her collegiate basketball career that will soon come after her time at Whitko. But the Wildcats are running off a nice string of success here, as Whitko will head into the new year with some momentum. They will be going to Huntington North on the 4th for the annual Huntington North Classic. They will take on the Vikings at 10:30 a.m. And then the winner of that contest will play the 7 p.m. contest against the winner of Noblesville and the Fort Wayne Northrop Bruins, an opponent that Whitko played back on November the 23rd, where Northrop beat them by 25 points. That's how talented Northrop is. So that pretty much does it for girls basketball. And then for the boys basketball section, we want to talk about briefly the conferences cover. At least we have some teams cover NEC sports, but beginning with the ACAC, Adams Central picked up a massive win in conference play against the Woodland Warriors on Friday, 64-48, to which Trace Muller added 22 points in that contest in a week where he averaged 22 points per game exactly. But the Jets, no less, dominate the Woodland Warriors at the hangar, as the Jets remain tied for first place with the Bluffton Tigers. And the Jets averaging 56 points per game and giving them only 45. They do have one more game in 2024. They're at Norwell on the 27th. That will be the Northeast 8 game of the week, the final one for 2024 portion of the season at around the Northeast corner. After that, they will be, I want to make sure I see. All right, here we go. When the new year begins, they will be at Belmont on January the 3rd before hosting Parkway, Ohio on the 4th. Bluffton, sitting at 4-2, 2-0 in conference play, had won 4 straight games, including a 70-27 win over Southern Wells, led by 30-point performance from Declan Greiser, before falling to the Garrett Railroaders on Saturday, 51-47. Tito Ball and the Bluffton Tigers do have one more contest for 2024 as they travel to the castle to take on their arch rivals, the Norwell Knights, for the ANEC Game of the Week and the ACAC Game of the Week on Saturday the 28th. They'll kick off the new year on January the 4th when they host Lakewood Park before they round out the pre-conference tournament slate by traveling to Woodland on the 11th before they play them again at Woodland 3 days later. That's the ACAC. We shift over to the Hoosier Plains briefly. Right now, Bethany Christian sits in a 3-way tie for first place with Trinity Greenlaw, not Trinity Lutheran, but Trinity Greenlaw, and Elkhart Christian. Bethany Christian, 3-4 overall, 1-0 conference play. Their lone conference win coming against Lakeland Christian back on Saturday. They do have a tournament coming up on the 27th, which that will be hosted by Grace College. And then they will kick off the new year on January the 7th when they host their rivals Elkhart Christian Academy in a crucial battle for the Hoosier Plains Conference. And then Hamilton, in their first year of the Hoosier Plains, they are 1-5, 0-2 in conference play. They just came off a game where they played at the old Hoosier Gymnasium down, where the site of where the film Hoosiers was filmed. They played in that gym against West Central Illinois, a state powerhouse in Illinois. They will be traveling to Garrett on January the 7th. Their county rivals and their former NECC rivals before traveling to Trinity Greenlawn on the 11th. Going to the NEA, conference play began last Friday. Columbia City, Norwell, New Haven, and Huntington North picked up conference wins. Columbia City took care of business relatively easily against East Noble, 60-44. Caden Burner led away with, I believe, would be about 17 points, 8 rebounds in that contest. Norwell picked up a nice win at DeKalb, 55-44. And then New Haven defeated the Belmont Braves 60-56 at the TP before Huntington North upset the Leo Lions 68-59, led by, I believe it's a 26-point performance from Titus Schultz. So just something coming up on the 27th. We do have some tournament action coming up in Delta, Kokomo, and Shenandoah. We do have NE8 schools participating in one of these tournaments. You can find more information easily through John Harrell, but just want to let you know that there are some tournaments still being played before we get to New Year. Norwell does have a non-conference game against Adams Central, as mentioned earlier, on the 27th. In NECC play, Lakeland sits in first place in the conference at 4-0, 6-2 overall. One of these wins came against the Westview Warriors on Tuesday, to where the Lakers held off a Westview rally to win that game 52-48, led by Levi Kutz, 17 points. They dominate Eastside by 40 points before blowing a 14-point third-quarter lead to Northside in a tournament hosted by Trine University, 62-56 loss at the hands of Northside. They will be taking on a Michigan school on January the 4th before traveling to West Noble on the 10th before NECC tournament play gets underway. And then lastly, we take a look at the Three Rivers Conference, where the Whitko Wildcats in their first year under Robert Ware sit 1-4. They picked up a crucial conference opening win against the Lewis Caskeens by the score of 40-37. It's kind of been a gritty, low-scoring type of performance for Whitko up to this point, but the Wildcats picked up a crucial confidence-boosting win for the Wildcats as they enter the final full week of 2024. They do have a tournament coming up on the 27th, hosted by Grace College. One of which their first opponent will be against Indiana Christian at 11:30 a.m. Once the new year begins, they will be taking on Metconiqua on the road on January the 4th. So that does it for basketball slate of things. We do want to briefly mention wrestling real quick. We do want to mention and want to congratulate the Columbia City Lady Eagles wrestling team. They won the inaugural NE8 championship over the weekend. So the Columbia City Eagles made some history, the first ever girls wrestling conference champion. We also want to congratulate Adams Central and New Haven boys wrestling with their strong performances in their conference super duels, both finishing undefeated in the super duels. One of which for New Haven came a win against the Belmont Braves, a rare win no less for New Haven. The last time the New Haven Bulldogs defeated the Belmont Braves in dual play, you got to go all the way back to 1963. So this is a historic win for New Haven nonetheless, as we get into the halfway mark of the boys wrestling season and near the end of the regular season for girls wrestling. Yes, girls wrestling does start the postseason earlier than the boys. So before you know, we'll be talking about the girls wrestling state tournament. There is a boys wrestling class tournament coming up in a few weeks as well. We do have several schools that are ranked in those classification pools, including the Belmont Braves, South Adams Starfires, the Adams Central Flying Jets, the Eastside Blazers, and I'm pretty sure the New Haven Bulldogs are ranked still as well. And yes, the Garrett Railroaders are also ranked in these classification pools. We will talk more about that as we get into the new year, but we do want to congratulate these teams on having such a great start to the season. So that's going to do it for the talk around the corner. Again, we're going to keep this one short and sweet for this episode. So now we're going to get into our interviews. We have 3 special guests on our show here for this episode. First of which will be the head football coach of the Adams Central Flying Jets, Michael Mosier. We also have the head girls basketball coach of the Whitko Wildcats, Justin Jordan. And then lastly, we have a senior on the East Noble Knights football team who also wrestles, by the way, in Dylan Krehl. So we will go ahead and shift over to the interviews. I am here with the head football coach of the now 2024 2A state champion Adams Central Flying Jets, Michael Mosier. Coach, how does it feel for me to say that right now?
Well, it feels pretty good, especially that we've tried it the last three years. So to finally overcome that challenge and get a victory feels pretty good.
Well, they usually don't say the 4th time's a charm, but I guess in this circumstance, we'll call it that for your team.
It was this time for us.
Yeah. Coach, when we talked back in August, we were talking about that first game against Garrett on the road, and we talked about how difficult that matchup was going to be considering how much you lost from last year, coming into a very tough atmosphere in Garrett and always a rowdy atmosphere in Garrett. Obviously, that was your only loss of the season, was against the Garrett Railroaders, 20-7. I can honestly say you learn a lot from that game, as Garrett obviously had a special season, went all the way to the semi-state in Class 3. Coach, when you look at the season as a whole, how much did your team improve from that first game up until the run of the state finals?
Well, I think tremendously, and I think they made a great improvement from game 1 to game 2 even. They really took a challenge that I gave them on Monday that our seniors needed to really step up and lead and make plays. You know, that was the biggest problem that we had, is seniors just not doing what we needed them to do. And those seniors really took that as a challenge and made things right against Eastside and then through the conference. So I was really proud how they were able to take that challenge on and rise to the occasion and do what we needed them to do, because I kind of thought really we had a good summer. I thought the guys did a really good job of leading during the summer, but it just kind of fell apart against Garrett. And they had to kind of right the ship a little bit, and they really did.
Mm-hmm. And if you looked at over the course of that regular season, you won the ACAC again, but obviously some challenges along the way, especially against with Bluffton and Heritage. You were down against Heritage, I believe, most of the first half, if not halftime. Yeah, at halftime. That's right. And you had to make that comeback to win 33-14. Bluffton gave your team some trouble at times defensively because of the quarterback Aston Best. You had to play him in sectionals. Obviously, that's difficult to do so. Coach, can you explain about the resiliency of this team and just the willingness to find ways to win?
Well, that's what they were really able to do. These kids have gotten used to winning games. They know how to win games. They've been taught that with the seniors that have been ahead of them, the various classes ahead of them, and they just kind of refuse. They refuse to lose. And they find ways to win, even times when we're not playing really well. And there were several games that we really weren't playing very well, and we had to come in at halftime and make adjustments. And sometimes we had to really press their buttons a little bit to get them going. They always strove to do what we wanted them to do, and I think that was just speaks volumes to who our kids were. They just were resilient, and they were able to come together as a team. They always did that. I thought they led well. They were very coachable. When we make adjustments at halftime, they always seem to just take it and embrace it and fix it. It just really speaks volumes to who our senior class was.
Mm-hmm. You've already mentioned senior class multiple times so far in this interview, and we talked about the transition from last year's senior class, which was a big class, to this year's seniors. Your leaders in most of your categories, offensively and defensively, were your seniors, including in the running backs position with with Aaron Hershey and Matt
Yep.
Heiser, both
Heiser.
seniors,
Yep.
not a whole bunch of major playing time, so to speak, compared to what the previous senior class was, and they
Yes.
filled in remarkably. Can you speak up on behalf of those seniors and what they did to this year's team?
Well, they really came in day one from the summer, and came. I don't want to say they had a chip on their shoulder. I don't think they really did, but they just were determined that we were going to have a good season. Because everybody kind of thought that, okay, we've had three good runs. You go to the state championship 3 years in a row with some very good teams, and some real good talent on those teams, and I think everybody thought, well, this senior group isn't like those three classes that were ahead of them. We're going to struggle. We're not going to be very good, and they really took that to heart. They didn't like that. And they were bound and determined that they were going to get back to state, if not win it. And that's crazy to kind of say, but that's kind of been their mantra. Is they really wanted to do that, to prove that that they're not a fluke. Now at Garrett, it kind of seemed like, whoa, maybe everybody is right, and maybe they can't do it. And I think that was the turnaround, that they had to really fix things as a group to come out there and win football games and achieve the goals that they hope to achieve, because it sure didn't look like it after Garrett. That's 100% sure. But we did see glimpses of it. There was about 2 minutes in that game where the wheels on the bus kind of fell apart, and we saw glimpses, but we just didn't see enough. And they really took that challenge. I'm really proud of our seniors, because it just this is a group that would run through. They really would run through a brick wall if we told them to, if it meant winning the game or achieving their goals. That is exactly what they would do.
Mm-hmm. We talked a lot about these big games we mentioned earlier, but who's been that one player that doesn't get that limelight, so to speak, that you've been most impressed with with that player's progression, or is there multiple players?
There would be multiples, but I would say one would be a senior, Carson Schnitz, where he had sporadic playing time in the past. He since his sophomore year, he was kind of that backup, but he would come in and play quite significantly depending on injuries and depending on what our defensive game plan was. And this summer he didn't start off very good, and we were like, as coaches, really thinking, well, he better going to have to get it going, because I don't know if he's going to be able to play. And I talked to him, Coach Hammond, our defensive coordinator, talked to him, and I think he really took it to heart that if he doesn't pick up his play, he may have to stand on the sidelines a little bit and not get the playing time that he wanted. And he's one that he just took that challenge on, and he ended up becoming. He wasn't selected a captain, but so many of these other seniors like him became captains. They might not have been formally captains, but they were captains, and he was one that was a great leader. If you watch the state game, he had that second pick on the sideline that led to our second score. He just ended up playing outstanding throughout the year for us. Another one was Jarrett Smith. I thought did a great job for us defensively. He was our secondary kid, and just played so hard and did so well that those guys just don't get the credit that Max Carr, Heiser, and Hershey get. And I thought he did outstanding. And really an unsung hero too is one of our captains, Drew Carr. He doesn't get a lot of limelight either. But Drew's been a starter for us the last few years, and primarily defense. But there's been occasions, especially in the semi-state game, where Joey Everett, our starting wingback, was injured, and Drew had to come in, and hadn't really done that all year. I mean, he's been practicing, of course, but he came in and just did an outstanding job for us. And he's really one of the most unselfish players that we have, because it's just like, hey, if you need me, I'm going to do it. If you don't, that's okay. I'm here for the team. And I think that's really the mantra of our guys, is it really was about team. It wasn't about, getting yards or getting tackles or, getting the things that I'm sorry, the media sometimes likes to focus on, and they just don't. They just were focused on winning football games.
I'm seeing a theme here so far, Coach, and they're showing the captaincy, but they're not wearing the captaincy all the time for
Yeah.
some of
Oh,
these seniors.
for sure. For sure. And that really was what the senior group was. I mean, they just were leaders. They were outstanding leaders who worked so hard, and probably worked harder than I don't I don't want us to take anything away from our last three groups, but I think this group knew that they weren't as talented as the other three groups as seniors, and they actually had to work harder collectively as a group than what the others did, because they didn't have the outstanding talent that we saw in our last three teams. And that's taking nothing away from our last three teams. Those guys did outstanding as well, but this group just was not loaded with a bunch of talent that they had to work hard to make things go well. And that's, I think, what attributed to our success.
Which is a good transition to my next question, because obviously the state tournament, you had pretty dominant run the state tournament, although before you got to the state finals, you had to go to Andrean, very nice
Yeah.
private school over in the north, we call it the region in Northwest
Yes, it's the
Indiana,
region.
in Andrean.
We went up to the region.
Yes. Talk about that performance, because Andrean, the score doesn't really indicate how well your team played, but this was a
Yeah.
kind of a tough, grinded out win for your team against a pretty talented Andrean team that's had some big time players coming through there.
I think that was our biggest game in the postseason. I was really surprised at how well we did at the state game, but I think Andrean was probably the best team that we played in the postseason. They were big, they were physical, they were fast, and yet our kids just did an outstanding job of not being intimidated by the situation. I mean, you're up in the region. I mean, those guys are tough and big, and our guys just weren't. They just came out and did what we wanted them to do. They fought hard. They weren't intimidated by the size or the speed. They just, again, it speaks to who we were as a team. We were just kind of a bunch of nobodies, so to speak, that didn't care who we were playing at what time. And when we just got it done. And I was so proud of them after this game, because it was a tough game. We came up and started off real hot. We got 2 scores on them, and I think they weren't sure what to do about that, or were kind of surprised by us getting up on them. And then they came roaring back in the second half, but our guys stuck with it. I thought we had a great defensive plan against them. We really slowed them down. They came, there was a run in the fourth quarter where it looked tight, and we were able to get some good stops. We were able to get some onside kicks, which were huge, because they were very good onside kicks. If they had gotten them, they may have went down and scored and tied the game and possibly won. So, Max Carr, our senior, one of our senior captains, outstanding player, he got both of them, and he just stepped up and got that done. And we had to get a first down to win, and we were able to do that. And that was just a great testimony to these kids. I mean, Andrean was tough. They were good. And I think we surprised a lot of people by winning that game.
Mm-hmm. And then obviously the state finals, and after playing Indianapolis for 3 straight years, Lynn Stockton kind of played a similar role in some ways and upset Indy Lutheran at their place, and rightfully so, went to the state finals with a very nice team and whatnot. A lot of excitement, hype in that game. Obviously, your team's been there for 3 straight years before that state finals, but that's the defense. You talked about the defense, the seniors. Obviously, that was the key in that game against Lynn Stockton, to get up, choose 3 scores on them early, just kind of get them on their toes a little bit. Just kind of talk about that start against Lynn Stockton.
I thought it was a great defensive start. I think our guys, Coach Hammond, John Hammond is our defensive coordinator, and I just think that he put a great plan in place, and our kids implemented it. And I think too, nothing against Clinton Stockton. Our kids had just been there, I think, 3 years in a row, that it just wasn't, it wasn't a big deal for us. kind of crazy to say, but it was like, okay, we're here. We've been here before. We're going to play a football game, and the bigness, the bigness of the game. I just didn't feel that in our kids. I just thought that it was another football game, and maybe it wasn't that way with Linton. I know that they had won it back in 2017, 18, somewhere in there, and it's just been a while since they were there, and maybe that played a little part in it. But our guys were really loose, and they were really confident, and I think that that really helped us to overcome nerves, overcome the big lights, and they just went out there and played. And Max Carr got that very crucial interception right there in the first drive, and we went down and scored. And then they came out and threw another one. Coaches will tell you you can't turn the ball over if you're going to win football games. I think that was the Achilles heel for Linton. They just turned it over early on, which led us to 2 big scores. They had a hard time coming out of that, and then in the second half they had two turnovers as well, close to the red zone, and we were able to capitalize on that as well. And I just thought defensively our guys played so hard. They played real physical, and then they took that over to the offense, because we like to play physical on both sides of the ball. If you watch any of our games, we're very physical. Our kids don't shy away from that, and I thought they did a really good job of kind of punching Linton a little bit, and Linton had a hard time fighting back, and taking nothing against Linton. Linton is a very good football team. You don't beat Indy Lutheran to get to the state finals and not be a good team. I just think I don't know if 3 years of frustration kind of came out, and our kids just came out right away wanting to win this ball game and send a message. And I think that probably played a part in it.
Yeah, and we talked about it. So Lynn Stanch's a very talented team. They were also a team
Yes,
that could throw the
very.
football a lot,
Yeah.
and your team just completely shut that down the whole way through. I do want to mention briefly with Adams Central, Jamison Roach had a monster performance in that state finals,
Yeah.
142 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns. Some would argue probably could have got 4, but that's
Yeah.
here and there. That's a whole discussion another time.
Yeah.
But Jamison Roach had a monster game. Cameron Frable had a great game defensively as well.
He did.
Can you describe? Okay, talk about those 2 performances in the state finals.
Yeah, those are 2 guys that we're going to depend a lot on for next year. And I think, again, they have to take what this group of seniors did and apply it next year. Cam's going to be a senior. We're going to need senior leadership. And Cam just played an outstanding game against Andrean and against Linton, and really throughout the season and postseason. Cam's a big part of what we do offensively, and he's a huge part about what we do on defense. He is hard for teams to handle. He's he's quick. He's elusive. He's a good defensive end, and he really did a great job of containing his side and rushing the quarterback, which I think we felt all year. When we had defensive success, it was because our interior guys, particularly Cam, was rushing the quarterback and forcing him to throw when he might not want to throw. He did that definitely in the state game. But Jamie has really done a great job of being our quarterback, and it's not easy for a sophomore to be able to do that. He made a lot of mistakes throughout the year. But one thing I love about him is that he makes mistakes, and sometimes they're big mistakes. And sometimes we get I get all over his case, but he always takes it, and he doesn't let it bother him, which is unusual. I was a quarterback in high school and college, and I don't think I did a good job of that. If a coach ripped me up side one down, up one side down, I don't know that I could come back. I always struggled a little bit with some confidence, and he doesn't do that. And that's one thing I really love about him, is that he's able to have a short memory. When he makes a mistake, he's going to right the wrong and get it on. And as someone who's played that position, I really, really respect that about him, and hope to see him grow more. I mean, his run game is outstanding. He's got to get better in the passing game a little bit. If you've watched the state game, even, there was a couple passes that he just missed the guy. And two guys, I think Braylon Reber was one and Max Carr was one where they were wide open. And so he struggles with passing on the run. So he's got to get better at that. He's good in the pocket. He's good if we, drop back and throw. He's got to get better at running because we do a lot of play action. He's got to get better at that. And I have confidence that he will.
Yeah, and he was only a sophomore just this past season. So he's got 2 more years to go, which is huge, huge experience coming up for James.
We've had sophomore quarterbacks in the past, of course. Ryan Black, who took us to the state championship 2 years ago. He was a junior on the first time and then a senior on the second time. I remember his sophomore year, and it was a struggle. And he ended up being an outstanding quarterback for us. So I'm looking for just more maturity in him next year as a junior, more confidence that can maybe take him then to a next level, and he can get better at the things that he struggles with.
Mm-hmm. One more question for me, Coach. Obviously, your team has went through a lot of things following the state finals, celebrations, pep rally, all the memories of reflecting on the season, which we're doing right now. Mm-hmm. Coach, as we put an end to this latest chapter of Adams Central football here in 2024, what's going to be the one thing you're going to remember the most about this season?
The one thing I'll remember the most is that these guys achieved so much when no one really thought they would. And I think that's what I will always respect about these kids is that, we should have won the state championship with those other three teams. No one expected this team to be that team to do it. And that's one thing I will always remember. They were just so determined throughout the season that they were going to do this. And I love the fact that they were able to do that. What a great group of guys. I will always remember them. They will be sorely missed. I say that every year, and I mean it every year. Anytime you have to say goodbye to a group of seniors, it's always hard to do that because you grow so close to them and you grow so fond of them. But this is a special group that was able to overcome obstacles, achieve when everybody thought it was going to be a building year for the Jets, and they didn't like that word at all. They were like, wait a second, we're not on a building year. We're gonna get things accomplished, and that's one thing I love about the group. They were able to accomplish that.
They were always saying, like, we've already built this thing. Let's just keep it rolling. So, Coach, any final thoughts before we let you go?
I just hope that our next year's group, I don't know what to expect next year. A lot of people, everybody asks me what's next year like, because, you achieved something great, but you know what, time to move on. You got to move on. And I just hope that our guys will take this as our seniors coming up will take this as a challenge, just like our seniors did this year, and say, hey, we're gonna achieve great things, and we're gonna keep this rolling and do our best, and that's what I expect out of them, and we'll see what happens in the future.
All right, that is Michael Mosier, the head football coach of the Adams Central Flying Jets, their second ever football state championship, the first since the year 2000 when Coach Minnick and his team did the unthinkable as well. Coach, thank you for taking time to talk about the Jets, and good luck in the offseason. Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas to you too.
I'm here with the head girls basketball coach of the Whitko Lady Wildcats, who now sit all alone in first place in the Three Rivers Conference. Coach, how are things going for you so far?
Everything's going pretty good. Been competing at a high level, getting some really good quality wins, just tweaking some things in practice, and just taking it day by day. But everything's been going well so far.
Mm-hmm. Going into the season, obviously, we looked at Whitko last year, 19-4, one of the best seasons in program history. Your team was fortunate enough to win a share of the conference thanks to the Rochester Zebras defeating Lewis Cass late in the regular season, winning just the second conference championship in the history of this program. Surprisingly enough, your team went all the way to the sectional finals, losing to Lewis, who would go on to win a state championship. Coach, when entering this season, talked about the excitement of this Whitko team that brought back a lot of players from that team a year ago.
Yeah, we had a lot of high expectations going into the season, especially with the core that I got to come back. The only one, the biggest one losing was probably Gwen Howard, who's kind of a surprise, but the core of the scoring and the passing and with everything back, we knew what we had coming in, and we were really excited about it.
Hmm. So far this season, you're coming in 8-2, entering this nice break for your team. Obviously, a nice win against Central Noble. You got a couple nice wins in conference play against Northwestern and Manchester. We'll talk about Lewis Cass shortly. A couple losses to Columbia City and Northup, two very talented teams in Class 3 and 4A respectively. But you are undefeated in Class 2A. Coach, as you assess the team so far, what are things you're most impressed with your team start?
The biggest thing has probably been, I say, our defense locking in more, not giving up extra possessions to teams, but on that side, just been a lot of over communicating. That's probably been the biggest thing. Um, Offensively, we've been pretty solid. Moving the basketball and taking what the defense has been giving us. But I probably say my biggest thing's been the defense this season so far.
Mm-hmm. And you look at the defense for Whitko, this is a team that's only given up less than 48 points a game, which is, I mean, I would say in general, it looks like it's a slight regression statistically, but I think the Northrop game and the Columbia City games kind of make it worse than it actually is. But in
Yeah.
conference play, it's complete domination against your conference, and particularly a game against Lewis Cass, a team that beat you in the regular season last year, a team that went all the way to semi-state last year, a team that only gives up 31 points a game. You were able to beat them by 25 points. Talk about that performance against Lewis Cass, the depth scoring, the team being able to find efficiency in a variety of different ways. Talk about what impressed you most about last night's performance.
Yeah, going into the game, we had a lot of motivation from last year. The year before, we blew a really big lead at their place and let that one slip away. So this year, our biggest thing was we knew they like to play a 2-3 zone, and they just kind of sit back in that. But we really wanted to force pushing the tempo and then also get up and pressing them into it to make them speed the game up. And we got some big stops last year and got some key stops from moments from kids that came off the bench, and then we made some shots, and it became contagious.
Mm-hmm. I want to look at this. I want to take a look at this team in general. Obviously, this is the same team, or most of the same teams last year. One of the players that did graduate from last year's team was Chloe Craig, who scored 1,000 points at Whitko and graduated with that milestone and whatnot. Obviously, you're returning a lot of good players from last year. Adriana Phillips, who just recently announced commitment to Principia College. Nice sharpshooter on your team. The Stonebreaker girls, Reese and Jama Stonebreaker, both averaging right around double figures. I think Reese is averaging like 12 or 13 points, and James is averaging around 11 points. And then he got Jocelyn Lukey having a nice year on a smaller role, averaging 7 points per game. Can you tell me just what these players have contributed to your team, especially with Adriana Phillips being a massive part of this team's turnaround from the first 2 years you were at Whitko?
Yeah, Jocelyn coming on, and then also Anna Allenbaugh, she's been kind of quiet, but Jocelyn coming on along this year. Her biggest asset is she can really shoot the basketball really well, and she's a solid athlete. So adding that to kind of replace Chloe, which is a big feat, but Jocelyn's came in really well. She fits what we do. And then Adriana's been our anchor. She stepped into Chloe's role as the captain, and the girls really follow her lead. And then Jama and Reese, they're just gonna go. They're really tremendous athletes, but they're just super unselfish. A lot of their points come off of what they do defensively for us, and it's been awesome. And we also have a freshman that plays a lot, Hazel Leffers, who's been really good for me off the bench.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, both Stonebreaker girls, they're one of your top leaders in assists, leaders in steals. I think around 9 or 10 combined between the two Stonebreaker girls who transferred prior to last year from Lakeland Christian to Whitko and have been just a ginormous impact for your team on both ends of the floor. Just smart basketball players, and like you said, completely unselfish for these two Stonebreaker girls. Looking ahead to your schedule, obviously you have a very nice break for your team. Your next game is not till January the 4th, which you're going to Huntington North in a long day of a holiday tournament. You're going to be playing Huntington North at 10:30 a.m. And then if you look at the tournament, I'm just going to take a look at John Harrell real quick. You have the other match, Noblesville and Northup, a team you're familiar with from early in the season, and you're going to be playing 2 games that day. And then soon to follow that, you're about a few days after that, you're going to be going back to conference play. You're at Wabash, the other undefeated team in conference play. Coach, as you look ahead to the next few days, or a few weeks, I should say, for your team, how do you want to be able to continue this momentous success, so to speak, to have an opportunity to play for a conference championship later on in the month of January?
Yeah, obviously, with the big break, we're off for almost 2 weeks, and then we go right into a fire. So, the biggest thing is just staying in the gym and then trying to stay consistent. But my biggest concern is probably, we go into a thing where we're playing 1 or 2 games a week, and now we're off, and then you got to try to get your bodies back into that mode. So, like I said, we're going into a fire. That holiday tournament's gonna be really good. Northrop's really good. Noblesville's really good, and Huntington North's really good. So I think it's gonna be big for us. Especially going into the tournament. I wanted to add some stuff to our schedule, so I'm excited about these games.
Mm-hmm. And to add more context for the viewers that don't understand Whitko's upcoming schedule, after those two dates I just mentioned, you're going to Rochester on the 11th. That's another tough matchup there. At Lakewood Park on the 16th. At Southwood on the 18th. And then you come back home on the 21st. Your third to last home game of the regular season. You're just going to be hosting the Wayne Generals, who are having a nice year in the SAC. So you're not going to get any breaks after this big break and the Christmas break.
Nah, no, not at all. The girls, the girls are probably as excited as I am. They like to compete. They're competitive kids. And they're just excited. I think last year, how they we got all the way to the sectional championship and eventually lost to the state champs. That's a feeling that they still remember, and they don't want to remember that. So that, like I said, they got some good goals, and this is what they wanted. So.
Mm-hmm. And there's still an opportunity to play Bishop Lures in the sectional because they are still in your sectional, whatnot, alongside with Bluffton, and I believe Woodland's back in your sectional this year because they dropped to 2A because of the recent changes in the IHSAA. That's a conversation for another time. Coach, this is your fourth season, I believe, at Whitko. Some ups and downs along the way. How has the Whitko community been during your time as the girls basketball coach?
It's they've been awesome, and this is actually my fifth year.
There you go.
But they've been awesome. When I first got there, it was just a complete rebuild. Teaching kids, what I wanted to do, how to interact, and obviously them just getting comfortable with me. But we took our bumps and bruises. I had some really, really good kids that instilled what we do right now. That showed these younger girls kind of how we go about it. But the community's been awesome. They welcome me with open arms, and the support's been amazing.
Mm-hmm. Final question for me, Coach. This is more outside of the Whitko conversation because not only are you the Whitko head girls basketball coach, you also are involved with Optimum Performance Sports during the AAU cycle and whatnot. And you obviously been coaching a lot of talented players across this Fort Wayne area and whatnot. Talk about how grateful your experience is, not only with Whitko, but OPS during these years and the relationships being built, not only with the players coming to your program at Whitko, but also with your AAU teams in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Yeah, it's been really a blessing. Just being able to obviously impact the youth around the area. There's so much talent on both the girls and the boys side, but just being able to advocate for the kids, and when you start with them at a young age, fourth and fifth grade, and then you keep that relationship growing, and just keep watching them blossom. But it's been awesome. And getting to work under an amazing company like OPS was also a great situation.
Mm-hmm. This is Justin Jordan, the head girls basketball coach of the Whitko Lady Wildcats. His team goes into holiday break first place in the Three Rivers Conference. Coach, any final thoughts before we let you go?
No, I appreciate the invitation, man, and happy holidays. You do a really good job supporting the kids around the area. So I appreciate you.
All right, Justin, thank you for taking time to talk about Whitko. Good luck on the rest of your season, and have a Merry Christmas to you.
Thanks, Sam. Take it easy.
I'm here with the senior running back and linebacker for the East Noble Knights, Dylan Krehl. Dylan, how are things going for you on this Christmas week?
Oh, it's going great. We just got done with the wrestling tournament at Krehl this past weekend, so overall just having a great week and looking forward to spending time with the family over the holidays.
And before we got on the air, you said your team only lost 2 matches going into that so far this year. So this is a very good start for your East Knoll wrestling program, which we may talk about at some point in the interview.
Yeah, we lost to Bishop DeWanger by 1, and then we lost to a really solid East Side team. And so overall, I think our team as a whole we're looking up right now going into this break.
Yeah, Eastside's also ranked in their classification, so they're quite a good wrestling program. Dylan, I want to talk about football here, and I just want to first talk about your background in football. When did football become a serious interest for you, and just kind of talk about your career throughout your time, especially up to this point now, being a senior that just ended your high school football career.
Yeah, so I started playing football around 11, 12 years ago in flag football at Kendallville at the baseball complex. And so ever since then, I've had love for the game. And each year I've just grown as a player, and I feel like I've grown more as a person each year I've gone. And then I went on to play tackle football in the East Knoll Youth Football League for a few years, got coached up by some amazing coaches there, and Troy Hartman and Scotty Ritchie, and made a lot of friends that have stuck with me throughout these 12 years of football. And then obviously I came into the middle school and played 2 years there. Only played running back my 7th grade year, which is kind of hard to believe, seeing as most people see as a linebacker. And so I only played running back my 7th grade year. And then 8th grade, I kind of started playing more linebacker and still running back. And then freshman year, I was mainly just linebacker. And ever since then, the rest is history. So overall, I mean, throughout my high school and years through middle school, I've been a running back and linebacker, nothing really outside of that. I played quarterback one time, and we didn't win the game. That just gives you any insight of my quarterback abilities.
We will not talk about that game specifically. So you should feel much better about this interview. Dylan, before we talk, going into this year, obviously last year was a great season for your team. You shared the conference with Leo New Haven, dominate New Haven in the first round sectionals, and then lost a heartbreaker to Leo on a field goal towards the end of the game in that sectional semifinal matchup. Leo went all the way to semi-state. Going into this year, lots of players coming back, including yourself, new head coach and Alex Stewart. Just kind of talk about the buy-in with Alex Stewart from the day he got the job and whatnot. The first time your team met with him, and throughout the process of how special you felt that this season could be for your team.
Yeah, so when we heard Stewart got interviewed, it was kind of a shocker because I'd never heard of Coach Stewart or heard of Western really, because they're in the southern part. And so when he came in, the first thing he did was he sat down and talked to all the seniors. He texted me right away and introduced himself and kind of what his idea was and plans for the future were in the off season. And so every day we always talked, and we kind of grew a connection throughout the season, and every day it just got better and better. We butted heads every now and then, but I think that just made our connection grow better. And now you look at us and we're decently good friends, and I know I can go to him and talk to him whenever I want. And so that buy-in was definitely, our seniors bought in right away to what he was saying and what he was preaching, because we knew that we had a really special senior class this year, and that if we wanted to go be great like how we had said we were the last 3 years, that we needed to really buy into what Coach Stewart was saying and just trust the process, that we believed he was going to be able to get us to where we wanted to go, and that if we just followed his role, the underclassmen would follow us and be a whole team buy-in. And you saw that, especially in the semi-state game where it's freezing and it's raining and it's just a horrible atmosphere to play in the environment, but everybody bought in. And so that just kind of showed from day one that everyone believed in what Stewart was saying, and that as long as we followed him, we didn't think anybody could stop us.
Mm-hmm. And with you, Dylan, specifically going into this year, Xander Brazel was your quarterback in the past, one of the great quarterbacks in East Noble football history. You had a new quarterback coming in, Riley Biddle, who was just playing defense for the most part last season. Now he was your quarterback for this season. Can you speak on behalf of just the progression of Riley Biddle as a quarterback, and as well as the offensive line in particular? Because the offensive line makes it all happen for you as a running back. Talk about the progression of the offensive line as well as the progression of Biddle at quarterback.
Yeah, so coming into this year, we all knew Riley was obviously going to be our starting quarterback, and we wanted him to play more defense probably than what he did throughout the year, but we had other guys step up, and so Riley only had to play offense. But words can't describe how great Riley was for us this year. It feels like in every game, Riley was making plays for us on both sides of the ball, but I couldn't even tell you the steps that Riley took to become I think he's one of the best quarterbacks right now in East Noble history. He doesn't have the stats or his name in the record book, but I feel like Riley Biddle is a top 5 East Noble quarterback in the history, and I just believe that because I go to practice with that kid every day, and I've never wanted to go to battle for a quarterback as much as I did for Riley because I knew I could trust Riley, and Riley trusted me, and we had a really good connection this year. We were always talking before plays, like calling out linebackers and which ones we thought were blitzing and what we kind of thought the play looked like. And so just having that connection with Riley really made big strides for us this year. And then his connection with the receivers was absolutely amazing. The receivers had so much respect for Riley that whenever Riley was telling them something that they need to improve, they weren't talking back to Riley. They listened, and they really took what Riley was saying to heart and fixed it for the next week. And then our O-line, I really can't talk enough about this O-line and how great they were this year for us. When you just look at the progression from week 1 to the state game, we had a few hiccups overall as a team, not going to lie there, but that offensive line this year made incredible strides. And if we didn't have those guys up front like James Miller, Hunter Shire, Hunter Bolin, Hunter Smithson, and Ian Smith, we're not making it to a state game. We're not even making it to round 2 of sectionals. And so the strides and effort those guys put into each and every day of practice those were some of the hardest working guys out on the field, and they wanted to get better and they wanted to push each other. And those guys were such a tight-knit group that nothing could break those guys' spirits, and they were always battling for each other and always picking up running backs after plays. They're always protecting Riley to their best ability.
Yeah, and it certainly was the case when you're playing Mishawaka, one of the tougher teams in all of Northern Indiana. You definitely need a strong line that can tackle and be able to get to the quarterback, get to the body, and whatnot. Dylan, can we talk about kind of the atmosphere and the mood away from football? What was it like being around your team for every practice, for every game? I know there are some personalities with this team, so just kind of talk about the chemistry with this team.
The chemistry for this team is by far the best chemistry in East Noble history. It has to be, because every day we went to practice, nobody was mad, nobody was really sad or anything. Everybody was high spirits, everybody was jumping around, running around, and that just goes to show that everybody wanted to be there. Nobody didn't want to be there. Nobody wanted to take plays off. Everybody wanted to be there and play with each other, because especially for us seniors, we knew that this year is likely the last year any of us will play on the same team together. And so just going out there and having fun with each other every day and just loving on each other, even though some of it was tough love, we all just got together and really had a bunch of fun this year. And you were talking about the multiple personalities. All of our personalities just grew so well together, especially with Aiden Lay coming in from New Pal. His style of play and just the type of person he is fit in just immaculately with our team, and he blended just so well with us. And so I can't say enough about this team and how much that we all just had fun, and there really wasn't any down periods in our time. We all were just bouncing around and having a whole bunch of fun.
Yeah, that certainly, and that chemistry played a huge factor into going all the way to Lucas Oil Stadium. As we looking back in the season, 13-2 overall. You had that one loss to Snyder, which clearly your team improved coming out of that Snyder game. You won the conference outright, dominated the Central and Southside, Leo and Bishop Dwayner. I can say that very often about East Noble dominating Dwayner, which is pretty impressive for this team. Huntington North, you beat them by 35 points in the regional, and then beating Mishawaka by 5, one of the greatest football games in East Noble history in the postseason, before falling to New Palestine by 30 points. But you got off to a good start with Logan Haddon's 80-yard touchdown catch, one of the great highlights of East Noble football history.
Okay.
Dylan, as you look back in this postseason run, and even going back to the season as a whole, what are some memories you're going to take away from this run that's going to take you for the rest of your life?
I'm going to take away that Mishawaka game probably the most, because just everything that went on in that game, all the highs and lows of that game, is you dream of playing in a game like that. You go to bed thinking of, man, I want to play in a game like that against Mishawaka. And then just some of the plays that were made in that Mishawaka game, especially by Aiden Lay, like I had said earlier, and Riley on defense and Dallas Plattner running the ball. It was just Kobe's big interception on that sidelines. I remember when he got that interception, just looking out in the crowd and just seeing it going ballistic and giving all the coaches hugs and seeing the coaches crying because they had known that we were going to state at that point. And then that last 2 plays of the game were the most scariest 2 plays of my entire high school career, because it was like, well, they got the ball with 7 seconds left, and you never want to give a ball to a team like that you know they can move the ball. But when that final whistle blew, it was just like all the air left my body. I was just so excited and knew that our plan of going to Lucas Oil had finally come full circle.
Yeah, and despite the loss to New Palestine, you Obviously, Mac had a tremendous career, over 2,000 yards rushing, 250 tackles, 5 sacks in your career. You also received the Mental Attitude Award for Class 4A, which is one of the rare accomplishments you can for any high school kid can get, is the Mental Attitude Award, regardless of win or loss in the championship game. Can you describe that feeling of being awarded by this tremendous state award?
Yeah, so I remember standing in the line to get my medal, and then I heard my name getting called over the announcements. I knew I was getting nominated for it because Coach Stewart had texted me earlier the week, but I didn't think I was going to win. And so when I heard my name being called, I walked over to Stewart and I gave him a big hug, and I just said that thank you for everything you've done. And then I saw my parents when they were walking out, and I ran over to my mom and gave her a big hug, because that was just – it was so cool to have my parents down on the field for that, especially knowing it was my last high school game, and just getting that picture with them just was probably that was the greatest thing that capped off my high school career. Even though we didn't win, just being on Lucas Oil with both my parents, receiving that award and getting that picture taken, it'll go down in history for me. And so even though we didn't win, that an SQ award is probably one of the greatest things that I'll take away from my high school career.
I could not have said it any better myself. Dylan, obviously you've been recognized after the season by the IFCA for one of the 50 best players in all of football, regardless of classification. I'm sure that is a tremendous honor for you. Other accomplishments may soon be announced in the coming days and weeks ahead as we get to the off season for football, and the All-Star game will be announced at some point in the off season. Dylan, my final question for you is kind of your future beyond East. Now, obviously you're still active with wrestling, which is having a tremendous season up to this point. But Dylan, do you have any plans beyond high school that you would like to pursue in the future?
Yeah, I'm going to go to college somewhere. I don't know yet. Still kind of looking over the options right now, but I'd like to go to a college where I can pursue my dream of getting a education degree for secondary and getting a minor in history, because one day I'd love to come back here to East Noble and take over the head football coaching job and go down as the greatest football coach in East Noble history. And so, but I do want to go to college right now. We're looking at that and looking at where I can get my degree at.
So you're pursuing education, is that correct?
Yep.
All right. Yes, that's when I first went for my first semester in college. I accidentally was majoring in education, in secondary education. My minor was in history. Transferred to communication as a major. I kept my history minor along the way. So I would say congratulations to you on your opportunities in educational career, and I hope it goes well for you on that. Dylan, any final thoughts before we let you go?
Go Knights.
All right, that is Dylan Krehl, the senior for East Noble. His high school football career is coming to an end, but he's currently staying active in wrestling. We want to wish East Noble Wrestling the best of luck throughout the rest of the season. Dylan, thank you very much, and have a Merry Christmas.
Yes, thank you. Merry Christmas.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the NEC Sports Podcast. We'd like to thank our guests for such a tremendous time to talk about their teams, and especially for Michael Mosier and Dylan Krehl, reflecting on their 2024 football seasons, to which Adams Central won a state championship. East Noble made it to the big stage before falling to New Path. Dylan Krehl, as he mentioned on the interview, winning the Mental Attitude Award for Class 4A, which is one of the rare accomplishments you can ever win at the high school level. So, as I mentioned earlier, this is our last episode before the new year begins. So, for my final words for this episode, I do want to wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Until the next time you see the NEC Sports Podcast, so long. I will see you in 2025. Thank you for watching the NEC Sports Podcast. Please like this video and like the page NEC Sports on YouTube. Let people know that the NEC Sports is on YouTube. Also like our Facebook page at Around the Northeast Corner, and follow either Around the Northeast Corner and Sam Frick on Twitter/X. We're also on Instagram as well. Just look for ANEC Sports or Around the Northeast Corner, and you will find us there. You can also follow the man himself, Sam Frick, the founder and editor at Around the Northeast Corner, for other additional content. This has been an Around the Northeast Corner presentation.